Hello everyone and welcome back to another machine walkthrough. I am Red Team Beaver and this week I will attack Jerry by HackTheBox. Jerry is an easy rated machine with a limited attack surface as you will see. It is a very nice box for beginners and during this video I will show a bit more advanced techniques with the Burp Intruder as well as beginner friendly techniques that involve more trials and errors. For the beginners out there, I recommend trying both ways of cracking the box. However, should you prefer one way or the other, feel free to skip ahead using the timestamps down in the description below. As always, thank you for watching and I hope you will enjoy this walkthrough of Jerry by HackTheBox. Sorry about that. Let's get started. Alright, so as always, I will begin by adding my IP address to the host file in order to give this IP address an alias that I can easily refer to whenever needed. In order to do so, I need to do sudo nano etc hosts. Now all I need to do is remove blue, add this IP address, and then name it jerry.htb. This way I can easily refer to simply jerry.htb instead of the old IP address, as we can see with this ping command. Once we have added the IP address to our hosts file, we can start a Nmap scan, which is always my first step in my enumeration process. Now, in order to do the Nmap scan, I will do nmap-sc for the standard scripts, -sv for version enumeration, -p- for a scan of all the ports, -on for the standard output, which will be inside the Jerry full file that is inside the scans folder. And finally, I will do -v for verbosity and then provide the IP address. Now, in order to save some time, I've already ran the scan, which we can see right here. You may notice another flag that's being added here, it's -pn. This is to skip host discovery. Since this is a Windows machine, sometimes Windows does not play well with host discovery and your Nmap scan may crash. In this case, doing -pn will simply ignore host discovery and still scan the machine, which is what I did. Now, you may notice that there is only one port open. This one port open is in HTTP port, and this is a very small attack surface because we don't have to enumerate a whole bunch of things. We know the way in will be through this port. So let's take a look at this port. Alright, so jerry.http, do not forget to put a port here because this isn't a quote-unquote standard port. Now coming here, we notice that this is a Apache Tomcat landing page. There's nothing too interesting here, it's all default stuff. What we may see is the manager app, which we will get back to in a few minutes. So the first thing I usually do whenever I see a landing page is I will start a GoBuster scan on it in order to find hidden directories or simply secret directories or admin directories. So I will do GoBuster there. I will provide a word list, which in my case is a default Kali word list that you can find inside your own machine, called directory list 2.3 medium.txt. Next, we'll provide the URL, jerry.htb. Don't forget the port again. Then we'll let it run. Now this will take some time, as you can see. I'm not even at 1% yet. So I will just leave it running and see if anything special pops up. But what I'm really interested in right now is this manager directory. Now, this manager directory can be accessed by clicking the manager app. As you can see at the bottom, it's manager HTML. Or we can simply type it inside the URL itself. Now, this requires us to authenticate. So let's try to find a way to authenticate to this application. Alright, so I will start with the more beginner-friendly version of this attack. So whenever you see something like this appear, there is always one thing you should be thinking about, and it's default credentials. Now, default credentials are part of the OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities on the website, and they are still a plague on current modern websites. So how do we find default credentials? Well, all we have to do really is go on Google and type, for example, Apache Tomcat default credentials. Now, for example, you will find this GitHub that seems to be, yeah, it contains default credentials for Apache Tomcat. Now, all of these are possibly valid combinations. So let's start by going from the top, right? And let's take a look at how we can access a manager app. So let's try admin, and then the password is password. All right, this doesn't seem to work. So let's try admin and then do Tomcat. Then do admin and then password a capital P. Now you get the gist of it. If you wanted the most beginner-friendly way to attack it would be to simply try all of these passwords one by one. In order to save some time, I will tell you right now that the credentials we need to use are the ones being used for this example right here, which is Tomcat and secret with a 3 instead of the first E. So let's try to attack it and access it. So let's do Tomcat and then S3CRET. Now doing so will log us to the Tomcat Web Application Manager. Let's try a better way of doing it, a little bit more advanced way of attacking this application. Alright, so moving on to the more advanced attack, what we want to do is actually use the Burp Intruder tool in order to attack using all of the payloads one by one and try to basically brute force our way into the manager app using default credentials and try all of them. So as you can see, I actually closed my Firefox tab because I wanted to log out. So let's get back to our Jerry. My proxy set up. And let's click here. And as you can see, now I need to log in again. So what I want to do right now is actually capture whenever I send my request. So in order to do so, I will start my proxy in Foxy proxy, and I will start my burp suite. Now this will allow me to capture the login request and then see what's happening behind the scenes. Let's click here. We see that we have a request here that's being sent. Let's forward it. Now we notice that we have a little authentication screen. Let's enter AAA and BBB. Now here we notice that the request that it's sending is actually using a basic authorization with base64 encoded data. So what is this base64 encoded data? Well, if we take a look at it, we actually notice that if we decode it, it's actually our data that we just sent. AHA as the username and BBB as the password, which are separated by a colon. So what can we do? Well, let's send this request to our intruder by pressing Ctrl-I or by right-clicking and then send to intruder. Let's close this first one. Now let's attack the target and had this as the main position, as the only position. A sniper attack will be enough because we are sending both the username and the password as one single encoded base64 string. Now for the payload, what we want to do is, let me just turn this off and fail it. Let's go back to our default credentials. And let's just grab everything. Let's not exploit, but creds.text. Save everything. Now remember, in order for the attack to work, we actually need to send all of the credentials separated by a colon. So username, colon, password. How do you do that? Well, I can simply open code, which is Visual Studio Code. It's already open in my good terminal, in my good folder, sorry. Now I find creds.text. Now what I want to do is actually use Shift, Alt, and then just the down arrow until I reach the bottom of it. Now I want to press Control and then the right arrow to skip one word. And now I want to press Delete and delete again. Now all we have to do left is to add a colon. So just like that, we've edited this whole password file, well, credentials file actually, super easily using Visual Studio Code. Now if we close this, we can actually cat creds and we see that it's a valid format. So what I want to do next is grab all of the valid, well, all of the potential credentials, go into my Burp Intruder and set it up as the payload. Now, you may remember that we need to put this old payload list as base64. So all I have to do is actually add a rule in payload processing to encode as base64. Lastly, do not forget to take off this URL and encode these characters because base64 will needs to be passed through normally and not encoded as URL encoded. Next, press attack. And let's wait. Now we see a bunch of unauthorized status codes. But we see one single 200 code. Let's let the attack finish. And let's sort by status. So this payload was a successful login. So let's grab this valid login string, this valid credential, base64 encoded credential string, and let's decode it. And as we can see, we have the Tomcat and secret credentials that are showing here as we saw before. So let's try them. Get secret. And without surprise, we are able to log into the Tomcat Web Application Manager. So this way of hacking into the application manager is actually, I believe, much better than the initial one where we were just manually typing everything. As you can see, it's quite easy to automate this process using all of the potential default credentials. Manually typing is okay in some cases when there's a small list of potential candidates for valid credentials. However, if you get into let's say 1,000 potential candidates for credentials, it gets much harder to crack. So using Burp Intruder or any kind of brute forcing tool may help with that. Next, let's take a look at the application manager and how we can exploit it in order to get a reverse shell. All right, now we are moving to the more fun part of this box, which is going to be exploitation. So how can we exploit Tomcat application managers? Well, we can see that we can actually deploy stuff. And as you may know, whenever we can upload something, we have the potential of uploading a malicious file that would give us a reverse shell. So how do we do that? Well, we want to create a WAR file to upload. Now, if we didn't know where to go about it, we could do, for example, MSFvenom, right? MSFvenom is a very default tool that you want to refer to whenever you want to create files. So we could do MSFvenom WAR file. Now we see that we have a netsec link with what seems to be a cheat sheet for MSFvenom. Let's Control F for WAR. And as you can see, we have a very nice one-liner to create a shell.war file. Let's grab it if I can. Oop. And there we go. Let's clear our terminal. And all I have to do now is set up my IP address at listening port. Let's grab my IP address, which is going to be my ton0 IP address because I'm on the tunnel, the VPN tunnel of HackTheBox. Next, let's input it. Then for the port, I usually go with something quite stealthy, like 443 for HTTPS, but feel free to use whatever you want. Now this seems to be fine, so let's press enter and hopefully create our shell.war file. If we look, we do have a shell.war file that had been created. Now what I want to do is create a listener on the port 443 for our shell to connect back to. Next, I want to go to the manager app, browse, go to my HackTheBox, Jerry, exploit, and upload the shell.war file. Now let's deploy it. As you can see, we actually created a /shell file. So let's travel to it. Let's do HTTP jerry.htb 8080 shell. Now we see that it is hanging a bit. This is usually a good sign. And as you can see, we are now on the machine. Let's check our privileges. Who am I? And just like that, we are authority system. We have fully compromised this machine. Let's take a look for the flags, which should be inside the users directory. We see that there's administrator. So let's do cd administrator. Desktop, because it's always on the desktop there. And just like that, we have another directory for flags, which should contain 2 flags. Alright guys and gals, that's it for this walkthrough of Jerry by HackTheBox. I hope you learned something out of it and that you enjoyed this video. If you liked the video, feel free to subscribe to the channel, it does help me a lot. If you want to support me, take a look at the links in the description down below, and make sure to comment which box you would like me to work on next. As always, thanks for watching and see you next week.